And so the guys, if you're doing something, if you have something for sale, if you have a business and you're not on YouTube, then you need to be.
Do you feel continually let down by modern media? Do you miss the good old days, back when all that mattered was a good story and not some agenda? Do you have ambitions of picking up a pen and pad and fighting the creative war yourself? Then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'm going to talk to a creator who said enough is enough and started making the content they wished was out there. Join us as we discuss the ups and downs of the self-publishing world. We want to help empower you to join the Iron Age of media. Welcome to Iron Age Marketing. Welcome everyone to another episode of Iron Age Marketing. I am Nikki P, here as always. My guest today is Stephen Hudler or Hudler. How do you pronounce that? Hudler. Interesting. I like it when it defies expectations. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to do what you do?
Well, my name's Steve, and I am a writer. I have always wanted to be a writer. I thought when I was younger that I might want to write comic books, but that didn't kind of happen. Life did. I had a couple ideas for stories, and I never really did anything with them. And then one day my wife was like, why don't you just go ahead and turn all these ideas into a book? I thought, I've never written a book before. So a couple months later, I finally decided to set my laptop down on my kitchen table, and I started typing up. And before I know it, I had 4 chapters into my first book, and I've been going ever since.
That's especially rare that you have a wife that's like, hey, how about you do something here, as opposed to, you need to stop spending your time doing this thing that you love to do.
Well, luckily at the time, she was working nights. So we have a daughter. I put my daughter to bed, and she wasn't home till about 11 o'clock at night. So I had like 3 or 4 hours just to not do nothing. So that was my writing time.
Well, that's awesome. It's good that you can fit that in with like family, because I know that's something a lot of people struggle with. Predominantly, my audience does tend to be men in their late 30s, early 40s, dealing with family life. What do you do when you come home from the factory? That kind of thing. So finding a place that it works in there. When you read your bio, it focuses a lot around like superhero fiction. Now, why is that a place that you wanted to go? Is there a particular reason that gravitates to you? I love horror. Horror is my thing. I couldn't begin to tell you why I like horror. It's just what I've always liked. Is it similar with you, or is there like something defining why that it is?
When I was a wee little kid, I saw Spider-Man on this TV show, and it just captivated me. And I bugged my parents to buy me a Spider-Man comic book, which they finally did. And I was just, it's something about him, the way he acted, the way he was, his heroicism, the way he put himself out there to defend people. Even as a kid, I thought that was pretty cool. So as I got older, I started collecting more comic books, and it just kind of sparked my imagination. So, like I said, I wanted to write comic books because I thought I was reading them a lot, and I thought, well, maybe I can write them. But again, that never worked out, and I had all these ideas written down, and I got kind of down on myself, having this huge pile of stuff that I just wasn't doing anything with. And like I said, my wife finally said, just go ahead and write it down. I think superheroes are important in today's culture. If you look out your window today, things aren't very good. There's a lot of just bad stuff going on. So superheroes, they're kind of what we like to try to strive to be if we were better people. And since I can't be a superhero, I thought I'd write about it. So I like to write about things that will inspire, that will let people, at least through reading, feel like they're going out and they're doing something good.
That's actually really interesting to me in that. So obviously, starting in comics, probably in the late 80s, it was the vogue thing became the deconstruction of the superhero. Now, I think probably now more than ever, like, the world needs Superman, like a real Superman out there, just a beacon, a symbol of hope. Like, we don't need gritty and dark. We've had so much of that like, yeah, and when the world is feeling kind of great and everything, you still kind of got some of that 1950s hope. Maybe it makes sense to kind of go, oh, well, let's tear this apart and look at it. But I can look out my window and see all the gritty and dark I ever want. So it's exciting to me that you mentioned that aspect of the character, of like the medium. Do you have any specific thoughts, and do you see that kind of coming to an end in the broader culture, or do you kind of feel like you're the answer to what the broader culture isn't getting right now?
Yeah, I really don't see it becoming, ending anytime soon. Unfortunately, with things like The Boys on Amazon, that is a very dark and gritty superhero show. I think that's the most deconstructed I've ever seen heroes.
The comics themselves are actually far worse. I
Yeah.
like the comics, but like, my issue with the TV show is that they're poorly written deconstruction, personally. But we don't have to go there.
A lot of the comic books these days don't really seem to want to confront just heroism. Captain America doesn't seem to be Captain America anymore. He's kind of dark and dirty. Like I said, Superman used to be called the Big Blue Boy Scout. And back in the 80s and 90s, that was like a bad thing. Everyone tried to darken him up, but we need more Big Blue Boy Scouts these days. And I think what I'm writing kind of fills that gap.
Well, it's strange, and it's like, is part of the problem is that we're in a place where the Big Blue Boy Scout, it just doesn't make sense to people, because they feel so down about society that they can't imagine anyone being that good. It's like the aspiration of goodness like that. It's just something that they can't even fathom. And that's, to me, that seems like a dangerous place to be culturally, aside from the fact that, like, it sounds like a really sad place to find your fiction. Like, if we can't even conceive of the idea of someone who is just good, like, where are we at there?
Yeah.
The other thing I want to note here is you're writing books, you're not writing comics. Is that a choice because, like, for financial reasons, comics means let's go find an artist who shares my vision, or can bring my vision to life, and then I'm going to spend a ton of money to, like, do this for everyone I have? Or was it just, it just made more sense to you to make books? Because it was, like I said, superheroes, you think comics, you don't usually think just prose, you don't think fiction in that regard.
Yeah, originally I kind of kept all my ideas to myself because I couldn't find an artist or anything. And the money thing was an issue. Working, and my wife was working, and we had a small child, and just really couldn't lay out the money at the time. And back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they didn't have Kickstarter and stuff yet. So when I finally did decide to write, about a week or so before my wife suggested me writing books, I was at a little comic book convention, and the guy there who drew his own comics, and I kind of mentioned my ideas. He said, "Why don't you write them like a pulp novel and have someone just do some black and white art for you and put it out periodically?" And then my wife said, "Well, if you're going to do that, might as well just go whole hog and just write the whole book." So I did. And I found that I really love writing fiction. I mean, I love writing novels. It's just, when you're doing comic books, you have a writer and you have an artist, and the writer writes in his script, action happens. And it's up to the artist to describe that action through his art. I have to actually write that down, and I have to convey that to the reader. And I find that very fun to figure out different ways to convey action as I'm writing it down.
Okay. So let's kind of change gears a little bit here. Let's talk about your actual book, or books. What are you actually putting out right now? What are you released? Have you released, or are you releasing? Where are we at in the scope of things?
I have 4 books out.
Okay, that's a jump.
Yeah, I have my first 3 books are Deadlock, Fallout, and Shattered. It's a 3-book series. It kind of starts my whole superhero universe. And then my latest book I just put out is just it's a novella. It's called Wrath and Blaze. Last year on my website, I put this story out a chapter at a time, once a month, kind of like a comic book.
Okay, I'm curious what platform are you using to do that as? You doing it from like an email list? Are you using something as a Gumroad or whatnot? Like, what's the approach there?
I have I have my own website, and people who are signed up to it get alerts. Plus, I'd go on to sites like Facebook and X, and I'd advertise.
The ultimate goal is you're using it as the attraction, the lead magnet to get people to the website, sign up, put them on the email list, and bring them into your ecosystem. It's good. That's the way you're supposed to do it. Tell me a little bit about these stories. Do you have a theme that you personally like to gravitate towards with your stories? Is there like an interconnected universe, or are they all kind of like one shots in their own place?
No, it's very interconnected. My first book, Deadlock, like I said, that kicks off the whole universe thing. There's these two alien races that have been at war for eons, and they're kind of deadlocked. So they find this out of the way planet that's nowhere near any of them. They just happen to find Earth, and their entire both armadas kind of like show up surrounding Earth, and each side picks a champion, and they augment them to fight, give them each basically superpowers. And they don't tell each other who they are, but they say, all right, you got to go find this guy and fight him. And whoever wins, that's who that alien species wins the war. So you have the hero, Eddie Solomon. He is a former LA detective, kind of down on his luck. He's not in a good place when the book starts. And he ends up getting zapped and given superpowers. Elsewhere in the country, there's this psychotic hitman who's in the middle of doing a job when he gets abducted by aliens and turned into their champion. And so Eddie, he spends the first third of the book getting used to his powers, figuring out what's happening, trying to put things together. And the bad guy, he has power, so he's reveling in it. So he's just going out and causing havoc and calling Eddie out. He's like, I don't know who you are, but come fight me.
Okay. And I'm just imagining he probably isn't having as difficult a time with his powers, is he? He's all the practice he can get because he doesn't care, willy-nilly just throwing them around, whereas I'm sure our protagonist is struggling with his newfound power.
There's one scene in the book that I really love where the villain, Zealot, he shows up at this fictitious Nevada town and he just declares war on it. He just lays waste to this town. I mean, there's a news chopper that ends up showing up and he lets them live. He just kind of declares himself and shows them the carnage and he leaves, and hoping that'll bring Eddie out.
Is the idea of this tournament kind of like, is it more of like a tournament where each book kind of focuses on a new battle that these races have between us, or is that just kind of like a catalyzing moment? Like, do they matter more as time goes on, or do they kind of fade away into the background and we deal with more of like an earthly issue as things go on? I guess like book one on.
It's just the catalyst. In book 2, Fallout, I'll try not to give too much away in case anyone's interested in reading. But something happens that causes less than 1% of the population of the Earth to gain superpowers. Eddie has to come to grips that there's all this stuff going on. He may or may not have had a hand in it. Now he's working with different people and different groups to figure out what's going on, and a new threat pops up, a more earthly threat. And so that's what happens there. And in the third book, the second book leaves off on a cliffhanger. So the third book picks up there and kind of finishes everything off and kind of sets the whole universe into motion.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to imagine if I ask this question, you're probably going to have a better answer than most of my guests. So this will make me very happy. When you're looking at, like, say, your titular character or your main character, is that very indicative of the audience that you're writing for? Like, you have a very clear vision of who's reading your books, why they're reading your books, and the elements of character that they gravitate towards.
Yes. Like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s reading comic books. That's what I'm trying to reproduce here. I'm trying to recreate the feeling of a comic book in a novel form. Eddie, my main character, he's half Captain America, half Spider-Man. I mean, he used to be a cop, so he's got this very strong moral compass that leads him into danger all the time. But he's a little snarky like Spider-Man used to be in the old days, just taunting a villain and trying to get him to do something dumb, then he can come in and finish him off.
Even when they didn't overcomplicate Spider-Man as a character, they let him be a snarky teenager before they had to worry about Mary Jane and all the relationships and the nonsense. Great. One of the things I feel, especially people that deal with comic-esque characters and comic book type themes, is that I'll be honest, just writers in general now, certainly in the independent sphere, they focus so deeply on their precious stories and not enough on the characters when they're talking about their books. The character is absolutely the more important part, because that's the body that you're stepping into. Like, that's who you're supposed to be empathizing with for the time that you're doing this. If you're not connecting with that at a deep visceral level, you're not going to have a very good time at the end of it. I finished a book yesterday, and after reading the whole book, it's like at no point did I personally feel connected to the character in any way. Like, I finished the book only because I needed to tack another notch on my Goodreads belt this year. To be completely honest, I could have put it down 10 minutes in, but it's like, and there's even a certain point, I'm like, are they really going to not flesh out this character in any more definition than this? And they never did. I never had a reason to really care about the people. They're so two-dimensional. It's like, I don't care. If it wasn't for Goodreads, this book would not be getting finished. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars just because, I don't know, it felt bad giving it less than 3 stars. It was a book that somebody wrote. It'd be pretty bad for me to give it less, I guess. So I appreciate good characters and allowing them to be the stand-in for us in books. One of the things that obviously we talked about, your normal guy who starts doing this, you got a family and wife, and I'm sure you didn't go out and get some huge advance from some big company to be the new white guy voice, middle-aged white guy voice in fiction. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you managed to find the finances, I guess, to actually put effort into marketing and making it all happen. A lot of people don't ever get that far. They make the thing and it's like, well, I got the book, I got it edited, it's out there, and now I've got nothing left. Hopefully people see it on my Twitter account.
Yeah, I'm still kind of that way. I mean, I think I'm better after about 7 years of working on this now. When I put out my first book, like I said, I was on Twitter at the time and Facebook, and I was promoting it on there as much as possible. I was trying to get my family and friends to read the book and give me some reviews on Amazon. That's tough. That's like trying to twist an arm and just come on, just give me a review, please. But about a year after I wrote my first book, I was watching YouTube, and whether it's right or wrong, there's one guy on there. He said YouTube is the second biggest search engine.
It's very correct. Second to it's the company's other search engine, Google.
And so the guy's like, if you're doing something, if you have something for sale, if you have a business and you're not on YouTube, then you need to be. I thought, well, I guess I'll go on YouTube. I'll start a YouTube channel. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm on YouTube. I put out some videos. I kind of mix them up with some writing advice and some comic book stuff.
Well, now, don't you feel put upon that, gosh darn it, you wanted to be a writer, not a YouTube personality, and it is awful and terrible that you have to jump through this hoop when all you want to do is write?
Yeah, it is a little bit tough. I mean, I would rather just be spending most of my time writing instead of getting on YouTube and trying to promote myself. But if it's what I got to do, then it's what I got to do. I mean, like I said, most of everything I do is out of pocket. I don't have a Patreon. I don't have any kind of Kickstarters. Writing the book is the easiest part. It's the cheapest part. I just sit down and write. But then the editing and the formatting and stuff comes along. That's where the money comes from or is needed. And then comes the marketing. I'm 53. I'm an older guy. And marketing is just so difficult for me because I'm not sure, should I put money here in some kind of Facebook ad or Amazon ad, or should I just keep plugging along the way I am? I have watched so many YouTube videos on marketing. It is not funny.
Well, that's the question. How many marketing videos do you watch specifically geared towards books and like that kind of media?
There are very few good book marketing videos out there. There are some other indie writers who put out marketing videos, but to be quite honest, they are all very young, pretty women who look good on camera. So a lot of their marketing is me. I got this pumpkin head on YouTube.
You're not the protected class societally for sure. Like, people aren't looking for more of what we have to say. It's definitely positive. It doesn't make it easy when there's people out there that attack just the sheer idea of marketing. I got into an argument a week or two ago with a guest who was saying that, I don't know if you know who Tyler Draw and Talk is on Twitter, who's a big of, we say funnel and stuff, like, but doing the stuff that works in marketing to build relationships and find new people. And I'm not even gonna mention his name, but this other character on there said how he's a piece of shit. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You just make good stuff and people will find it, which is the dumbest advice I've ever heard in my life, personally. And as I invited him on the show, I'm like, hey man, like, if you think that we're wrong, please come on, educate my audience. I don't want to be telling people what to do the wrong thing. Maybe you do know more than me. I'm humble enough to admit that. To which he responded, suck my dick. And I'm like, okay, so bad advice and you're an asshole. But that's a stigma that people put up with me. If you go out there and actually try and sell your comic book and try and get, you're met with, oh, that's slimy, that's gross. Where I come from in marketing, the idea is if you believe in your product, you should have no trouble selling it. Don't sell anything you don't believe in. Well, I think my comic book's good. I think your life's going to be better for having read it. My book, whatever it is, my role-playing game. So it's definitely, in my last episode, one of the things we talked about specifically was the stigma. So it's like when you only have so much money to put somewhere into this endeavor, and then you're going to get treated like crap for doing it. It's like the zeitgeist is to just stay nobody forever. It's got to be a frustrating position to be in for sure. You find that you have to deal with the internal stuff on top of, like, I don't really want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a writer, but now I need to deal with backlash just for doing this to hawk my books.
I would much rather be writing than doing YouTube. I have done YouTube now for about 2 or 3 years. I don't mind it. I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I'm a writer on YouTube. I think I don't know if everybody can understand that, because there are a lot of YouTubers out there these days who have huge followings and they've never written anything, or they've never seemed to write anything, but now they all want to put out books and comic books and people are just eating them up. Whereas I've written several books and I'm just some small guy here trying to hawk my wares. So it gets a little frustrating, but like I said, I know what I wrote is good. And I'm going to do everything I can to get it in front of everybody's eyeballs. Even if I got to set up a stand outside of my house and sell lemonade and a book with every purchase.
Well, I've got a cute little daughter. I'm still trying to find the way that I can utilize her to sell what I do. So whatever works for you. Maybe the lemonade stand with the cute little girl is the thing I need to do. Speaking of, selling the book, why don't you tell people where they can go and find your books and get a copy of their own if that's something they're interested in?
Well, you can find my books on Amazon. They're there exclusively. You can find me. Just find my name and type in Deadlock, Fallout, or Shattered, and it should bring you up to that. Or if you go on to stephenhudler.com, it's my website, and find the little tab, the EVOREALM, which is my name for my universe, that'll take you to a page where you can read little snippets about each book. And at the bottom, it'll take you to the Amazon page where you can find all my books.
All right. And if people are interested in checking you out on YouTube, where can I check you out there?
I am the Nerd Way, so you can find me there.
Not to be confused with the Nerdist Way.
No, not them doing. I'm just the Nerd Way.
Good. All right. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on today, Stephen. And folks, hopefully you learned a little something today, and you'll have a good one.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Do you fancy yourself the next Tolkien, Lewis, or Barker? Maybe you just have something subversive to say. Hopefully this podcast is helping you. But maybe your ambitions are just a little bigger than you can handle on your own. Head over to ironeadsmarketing.com and let Nikki P help ensure your book doesn't release to nobody.